Hi, my name is Maureen Giblin, and I've had the privilege of serving on staff here for 2.5 years. About 25 years ago, I found myself in a season where I felt spiritually lost. I loved Jesus, but I wasn't sure what it really meant to walk with him or walk with him well. I felt alone, empty, and unsure of what faith was supposed to look like in everyday life. At the time, I'd been attending a church in my area for a couple of years. And that summer, a missionary who had grown up in the church was going to be our VBS missionary. We met during VBS that summer, and because of mutual friends, we ended up spending time together throughout that summer. We were just getting to know each other through casual conversations and shared time with friends. On her last Sunday before returning to the field, I wanted to say goodbye. She was in the middle of a conversation with someone that had lasted a little while, and I didn't want to interrupt, and I felt a little awkward lingering, so I just decided to quietly slip out. As I walked past her, she suddenly reached out, she grabbed my arm and pulled me back to her side without ever breaking eye contact with the person she was speaking to. When she finished her conversation, she turned to me and said, "I'm so glad I caught you." What I didn't realize in that moment was that this small interaction would become the beginning of a friendship and a mentoring relationship that has now lasted 25 years and changed the course of my life. She gave me a front row seat to what it looked like to walk with Jesus. She asked thoughtful questions and held space for my stories. She encouraged me to seek what God was asking me and then to simply take the next step of obedience. Through her influence, my prayer life deepened, my relationship with Jesus became more real and personal, and over time, God even used her encouragement to help me loosen my grip on anxiety and step into obedience to a calling I would never have imagined for myself, serving as a missionary in Kosovo. Looking back, I can honestly say that I would likely not be who I am today or where I am today without her steady commitment to helping me keep my eyes on Jesus. Have you ever met someone who changed the direction of your life? Maybe it was a teacher or a coach, a mentor or a friend, someone who invited you into something new, something bigger than you imagined for yourself. In the Gospel of John, we see a moment just like that. Jesus begins calling people to follow him. And what's fascinating is how simple the invitation is. He doesn't begin with a sermon, he doesn't demand a long list of commitments. Instead, he begins with a question and an invitation. Come and see. Today we're looking at John chapter 1, verses 35 through 51, where the first disciples to begin to follow Jesus. And in their story, we see something about what it means for us to follow him today. The passage begins with John the Baptist standing with two of his disciples. When Jesus walks by, John says, "Look, the Lamb of God." Immediately, two of his disciples begin following Jesus. It's interesting that their journey begins through someone else's witness. John puts their eyes on Jesus. And that's often how faith begins. Someone points us in his direction. A parent, a friend, a pastor, a coworker, someone who says in one way or another, you should look at Jesus. When Jesus notices the two men following him, he turns and asks them a question. What are you seeking? That's a powerful question. Jesus doesn't begin by telling them what they should do. Instead, he asks them to look at their own hearts. What are you seeking? Meaning, hope, truth, purpose, forgiveness, a new start. Many people follow Jesus initially because they're searching for something. And Jesus meets people right there in their searching. The disciples respond with a question of their own. Rabbi, where are you staying? And Jesus says something simple and profound. Come and you'll see. This is one of the most beautiful invitations in the entire gospel. Jesus invites them to spend time with him, to be with him, to observe him, to learn from him. Following Jesus is not first about rules or performance. It begins with relationship. It begins with being with him. The text says they spent the rest of the day with Jesus, and we're not told what they talked about, or we're not told what happened. But something in that time changed them, because immediately they start telling others. One of the two disciples is Andrew. After spending time with Jesus, the first thing Andrew does is find his brother Simon, and he tells him, "We have found the Messiah." Then Andrew brings Simon to Jesus. That's such a simple but powerful picture of how faith spreads. Andrew didn't preach a sermon. He didn't have all the answers yet. He simply brought someone he loved to meet Jesus. And Jesus immediately speaks to Simon's identity. "You are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas." Cephas, or Peter, means rock. Jesus sees not only who Simon is, but who he'll become. And that's one of the most beautiful things about Jesus. He sees deeper than anyone else. He sees our potential before we even see it in ourselves. The next day, Jesus calls Philip with 2 words, "Follow me." And Philip does the same thing Andrew did. He goes and finds Nathanael. Philip says, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth." Nathanael's response is honest. "Nazareth? Can anything good come from there?" Nazareth was a small, unimpressive town, so Nathan is skeptical. But Philip doesn't argue. He simply says, "Come and see." Again, the same invitation. Faith often begins not with winning arguments, but with extending an invitation. Come and see, experience Jesus for yourself. When Nathanael approaches, Jesus says something surprising. "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael asks, "How do you know me?" And Jesus responds, "Well, I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." Something about this moment convinces Nathanael that Jesus sees him fully. And Nathanael responds with a powerful declaration, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus then promises something even greater. "You will see greater things than these. You will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." In other words, Jesus is saying, you think this moment is impressive? Just wait. Following Jesus will open their eyes to things they never imagined. The passage shows us several things about following Jesus. First, following Jesus often begins with an invitation. Someone points us to him. Someone says, "Come and see." Second, Jesus invites us into relationship. Christianity is not primarily about information. It's about walking with a person. Third, people who encounter Jesus and naturally want to share him with others. Andrew brought Peter, Philip brought Nathanael, and one of the most powerful ways God works is through ordinary relationships. And finally, Jesus sees who we truly are. He sees our struggles, our doubts, our questions, and he still calls us to follow him. But he also sees who we can become. Following Jesus isn't just about where we are now. It's about who we're becoming as we walk with him. Imagine hearing those words from Jesus, "Follow me." That invitation is still being spoken today. And maybe the most important question we can ask ourselves is the one Jesus asked at the beginning of this passage. What are you seeking? Because whatever we are searching for, meaning, peace, forgiveness, purpose, Jesus invites us in the same way he invited those first disciples. Come and see.